Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to Revelations with Rowena. I am so excited to have my friend and colleague Kayla Barnes here from Kayla Barnes Fitness to talk about ditching that diet mentality. I am super excited. We're just before we started recording, I was talking about my own journey, right? I had my beautiful baby girl last year and it was like, baby weight and stuff. So I'm super interested to hear what Kayla has to say. So welcome, Kayla. Thank you so much for being here on the show.
Well, thanks, Rowena, for having me. I'm super excited to share this message with you and with your viewers, and I hope they take something valuable out of this message uh, and yeah, and they enjoy it.
I'm sure we all will. And of course, as always, we'll have the replays. So even if folks miss it this time around live, they'll be able to watch it and share it with those who need to receive the message. So before we get into the main topic, I'd love to know more about your journey, what brought you to starting your business, and who exactly you serve.
Yeah. So I'll do the really quick like rundown version. So when I was in high school, I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. I went into college. I went to Frostburg State University here in Maryland, and that was my track. I was going to, graduate with a biology degree, and then I was going to go into physical therapy. Well, I decided halfway through there that that wasn't the track that I wanted to go. So I graduated in kinesiology. That just seemed to be more in my wheelhouse. I gravitated towards that. When I got out of school, I did all the things. I took all the tests. Applied to schools. I even had a couple interviews. And the Lord just works in mysterious ways. And He, shook His finger and He's like, "Kayla, I've got another plan for you." And He led me down another path.
Hmm.
And throughout my course history and in college, we basically were studying to prepare for the ACSM certified personal trainer exam. So I
Hmm.
was like, well, I have all this knowledge and this education under my belt already, and might as well put it to good use. So I studied and I took the test, and then I started working as a personal trainer. I first saw it as a stepping stone onto bigger and better things, and just something to fill the time, get experience with people. And I was going to continue physical therapy.
Hmm.
Well, again, the Lord's like, "No, Kayla, I think this is where it's at for you. This is where it's at." And so I stuck with it, and I've been working as an in-person personal trainer for the last eight and a half years.
Wow.
And it was the pandemic, unfortunately, that really kind of kicked me on my ass, if that's okay for me to say.
Oh, yes, that is
um,
fine.
and really showed me, unfortunately, and I feel like a lot of in-person personal trainers can probably agree with me, is it really showed us how vulnerable our job was. That
Mm.
our job is very dependent upon, obviously, people walking through the door. And if they're not coming in to the gym, if they're not joining the gym, they're not getting out of their house, we don't have clients. And
Yeah.
our expertise and our knowledge is being put to waste. And there's people out there that need us, and if we don't have a way of reaching them, then what good is all that? We have to reach the people where they are. And so it kind of really spurred that online lifestyle, the online training lifestyle. And so, about September of last year, I joined a mentorship program, and they basically taught me how to start, my online business. And I took my in-person training skills and I applied that to the online space. And I've been Kayla Barnes Fitness basically ever since. I left my gym in December, and I've been full time since December.
Wow, that's amazing. So, a couple of things came to mind as you were telling us this story. You mentioned there were several times that you I was just talking about it with a group this morning, the whisper, right? Or the little
Mhm.
poke, the nod from God, from source saying, don't go this way, or you should stay on this path versus this path." So I first of all applaud you for leaning into that and for moving forward and progressing in that way, because not everyone would continue on, right? Not everyone will listen to
Yeah.
that. They'll just be like, "Oh, no, no, no." So good for you for going down a path and being like, let me continue on and this path. And then secondly, goodness, yeah, the your comment about COVID and how it I've talked about it several times as this collective retreat. It was a wake up call, I feel, for a lot of us individually as business owners in our own families, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what are we doing here? What can how can we, as you mentioned, reach the people where they are? I love that.
Yeah.
I love how you said that. And I know for me personally, I've now been practicing, for example, yoga for quite some time, but it started with that at home practice to build that confidence and feel comfortable and find someone that could, guide me along the way. So I love that you now can do that to serve your clients. What what are some what have been some benefits and maybe even some challenges or drawbacks to shifting your business online?
Oh yeah. Well, as you were talking about like you're congratulating me for sticking with that, like, that nudge in the direction that I was almost like, maybe I don't want to do that. I think some of it too was like just reevaluating, like, what do I find important, what do I find valuable, and
Mm,
it was like I can do all of the same core things that I wanted to be able to do with physical therapy. Honestly, I can do the same core value things with personal training, and so I think that's what kind of made it easier to stay on that path
love
when
that.
I felt like, am I just giving up? Is this the easy
Mm,
route that I'm taking by staying, in this position? But going back to your question, which I, I squirrel. I'm like, I
No,
totally
you're
forgot.
fine. You're totally fine. You know what though? You when you brought up the knowing it's a prime example of knowing your why, right? The
Yeah,
values behind what you do and why you do it. If you have a clear north star or a clear why behind the work that you do, then whatever direction, if it is in alignment with that, then you're totally fine. The question was related to doing that big shift
yeah,
from in-person gym. You said you left your gym at the end of the year.
yeah,
How has that been helpful, beneficial, maybe even challenging or frustrating as you made that pivot?
yeah. So, um, challenges have been, how can I reestablish myself?
Mm,
I if you're local, if local to the area that I was working at, I'm very well known for that. And I've been there for a long period of time. So it's like, how can I almost like disassociate myself? Not for any unparticular reason, but just now I'm my own entity. I'm myself. It's like when you break up with someone, you're trying to find out, who am I? And you're like, I'm Kayla. And how can I share that with you in a new way, and get you to see me, I guess, in a new light. You know what I mean? Um, Clients, yes, because when I was an in-person trainer, it was kind of that waiting game. It was that we waited for people to walk through the door, and maybe I did it wrong. I'm learning now about like networking and maybe how I should have been doing it as an in-person trainer. But at the time, clients kind of came to us. We just kind of had
Mhm.
that flow of clientele because they wanted to join our gym, and the way that the systems were set up was that they immediately had that connection or contact with the
Right.
personal trainer. So getting clients has definitely been something that's been quite the change and the shift, but also, um, how do I train someone online? How do I go from the correctives queen, to the stretching queen, where you're hands on, very much hands on with the client,
Yeah.
to now I'm meeting with people like this. I'm talking with them via, my laptop or my phone, and I'm going over their movement assessment in this fashion. And not to toot my own horn or anything, but I feel like I have a good set of eyes that I'm able to pick up on those things, even in, this capacity. So I've just been able to figure out, how can I keep the same level of quality that I was providing them in person and just transition that online. And I feel like I'm able to honestly, Rowena, give them even more value and that time and attention on my own, on the online space, rather than being in the in-person space. It's been challenging for sure. The startup is always challenging, especially like
Yeah.
with a new client. It just seems like they've been being bombarded with a lot of stuff at the beginning, but that's just the paperwork. That's just the gathering the information. It would be no different if we had an in-person consultation,
Mm.
but now instead of that, it's digital, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it's a learning process. It really is. And it's honestly, it's pushed me outside of my comfort zone in ways that you couldn't even imagine. Rowena, if you would have met me in college, we would have never had this conversation. I was in public speaking, right? Because every freshman has to take
Yep.
public speaking, and well, every student has to take public speaking of some kind. And I had to explain how to do a process, right? Very simple
Mhm.
process. I think it was grilled cheese. How to make a grilled cheese sandwich, right? You had to break it down into steps and everything.
Yep.
And I dreaded having to have that conversation. Now, these
Yep.
are my peers. These are people that are my age. They're maybe even some of my friends, right? I should be able to go up and talk to them about how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. I mean, come on, it's not that hard. But like, I hated it. Shaky, sweaty
Yeah.
palms, my knees are shaking, my voice, and I hated talking in front of other people because, I mean, are you hearing what I'm hearing? This
Oh,
voice.
Kayla, stop.
So like I just hated it. I was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's taken me quite some time to get used to speaking, in on a camera. Sometimes I'm talking to myself, Instagram stories or even sometimes Facebook lives. I'm just talking to myself, but hoping that somewhere someone might find my message and it might resonate with them. So it's been a lot of changes for sure. Um, and in the long run though, I mean, it's helping me be who I am. It's helping me become the person that I need to be
Mm.
in order to serve the people that I need to serve. And it's just part of the journey. It's part of the journey, you know?
I love that. First of all, feel free to toot your own horn as much as you'd like in
Toot,
this space. Toot toot all day long
toot.
because you are doing it, girlfriend, and you are, it's just I can see it. I can feel your energy. I can see it in your voice that or see in your voice. I can see it in your I can hear it in your voice. And that's the thing. And the public speaking piece, as someone who used to teach public speaking at a college level, one of the stats, right, is that people fear public speaking more than snakes and death. So
Wow.
you're not alone in the nervousness, right? When I took public speaking as an undergrad, same, I was a theater performer, but that was me being someone else, right?
Yeah.
Versus you showing up as yourself and you are doing it magnificently. So
Oh,
that
thank
is
you.
awesome. So you mentioned grilled cheese, which I felt was a good transition into your work with this ditching the diet mentality and food because obviously personal training, fitness, and nutrition, I would imagine go hand in hand, right? Like
Of
what
course.
you're eating and what you're feeding yourself is going to impact your body and your health. So let's talk a little bit about that and how that's been a part of your core messaging and programs for your clients.
Yeah, I think it's really important, maybe now more than ever, that this message gets spread to people and that they really understand what it means when I say that. So,
Mm,
quick backstory: about 3 years ago, a consultant came into the gym that I was working in with a wonder solution, right? It was the fix your problem solution. You'll never, this is your solution to weight loss. And
mhm.
if you do this program, you're going to reap all the benefits. You're going to lose weight rapidly and all this stuff. And so, me being the skeptic that I am and being very aware of, like, well, I don't know. I feel like this is kind of scammy. I'm not 100% down with this. And I was already known as the nutrition person at our gym anyway. So this guy
Mm,
really had to, like, oh, he had to win me over.
yeah.
Okay. And so, oh, he did. Let me just tell you, he won me over.
Oh,
And
wow.
the way that I'm going to say it is going to make me sound really horrible, but I'll redeem myself. I promise. So the way that he won me over was because he saw a girl who loved what she does,
Mhm.
but was also struggling financially.
Mm.
And he knew that. And so he played with my heartstrings and said, if you're successful in this program and then you are successful at selling it to other people, you're going to make so much money. You're never going to have to worry about your bills. You're going to,
Mhm.
abundance is going to come to you.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I read all of the information. There were even like courses that you had to go through before you could even start the program, and everything made sense.
Mhm.
From a scientific base, evidence based, it all made sense. And so I
Mhm.
did it. And I went through this program. I lost 30 pounds in 3 months. Now, you could say I was successful, but I'm going to beg to differ because what happened was it wrecked my life.
Oh.
It created an eating disorder within myself. I started binge
Oh.
eating. I
Oh.
lost my period. I don't know if that's too much info for some
No.
people, but I ended up having hormonal issues, and I was miserable, and I was hiding this binge eating because I'm the fitness guru. I'm a personal trainer. People come to me to help me fix their problems, and
Wow.
I have a problem. So I was hiding it from people. And so, part of part of my journey is, I've been where a lot of people have been. They've been that desperate where they wanted to lose weight, or they, were presented with the opportunity and they took it, and now their body is, kind of wrecked. And now we're
Mm.
trying to reestablish our hormones. We're trying to reestablish now our relationship with food, because not only before the diet was it messed up, through the diet it was messed up, it got royally messed up, and then afterwards now we just don't know how to handle ourselves. So
Yeah.
a lot of the ditch the diet mentality is coming from personal experience. And so a lot of the clients that I do work with are emotional eaters, binge eaters. They have a really poor relationship with food, and
Mm.
I just see and I can feel their pain because I've been there. And
Yeah.
so if you're someone who is struggling with those eating behaviors and you want to lose weight, we can't really do that at the same time.
Mm.
So, if we want to truly and honestly recover from that eating disorder, if you were to call it that, or disordered eating, right? We have to we have to ditch the diet first and foremost, because more often than not, binge eating is an after effect. It's a side effect, right, of a restrictive diet, which is what
Mhm.
I was on. I was on a very restrictive diet. I could I can't remember exactly what I had to eat now, probably because I've tried to wipe it from my
Mm.
brain, but there
Yeah.
was a laundry list of things that I couldn't have. And it was even healthy foods that I couldn't have. I had to have certain vegetables. I could only have certain fruits. I could only have certain cuts of meat. So it was just very, very, very restrictive. And so I'm a very true and firm believer that that's one of the reasons why I acquired that behavior. Now, I'm not saying that that program put a gun to my head saying you have to be a binge eater, but I know from my own research and from talking with hundreds of other women that restrictive dieting is at the core a main reason why binge eating happens. So if you want to recover, you have to stop dieting. And diet culture stems through everything. It's like a it's like a disease. Diet culture just it's fingers, its veins run deep into everything.
Mhm.
And it just
Mhm.
makes me so sad. And so that's one of the main reasons why I'm so passionate about it. And then that's one of the, main things that I do work on with clients in my program.
Well, first of all, Kayla, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your story. And I firmly believe, and it truly resonates, the fact that you're like, but wait, I have to hide it because I'm the fitness guru, right? I feel like a lot of us have that same mentality in whatever space we're in, right? Like, I can't be the coach. Like I don't have my shit together, right? Like, how can I
Mhm.
be helping? But it's these stories, it's our journeys that then we can reflect on and then be able to help other people, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's beautiful and profound that you took this experience and now you're harnessing it in two ways to help your own clients. And you're absolutely right. This culture of disordered eating, or how we should look or how we should eat, this restrictive dieting, it permeates, it runs rampant in
Yeah.
our culture, in media. It's everywhere we go. So what exactly goes into it? Because it sounds like that there might be some mindset that ties into it as well, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think scarcity has to be the largest aspect of it, right? Because especially when you're on that, if you're on a restrictive diet and you have binge eating from that restrictive diet, it's coming from that place of scarcity, right? You're like, well, I don't know when I'm going to have that thing again. So I might as well finish all of it, right? Or the it's not only scarcity, but it's also the perfectionist mindset, right? So
Mhm.
perfectionists run on all or none thinking, black or white, yes or no, right? And so it's like they can't just have part of a bag of chips. If it's like this much at the end, they're like, well, it's not enough to save, so let's just eat it all, right? And so then that mentality goes into everything else.
Wow.
Those are two of the biggest things. Like binge eating is more like, I don't want to say it's more appealing, but that's kind of the word, to perfectionists, right? Because they flip into those categories of yep or the F it switch gets flipped so fast. And then also with that scarcity mindset of, oh, I don't know when I'm going to have it again. Oh, it's the holidays. Aunt Margaret only makes this Jello salad every Easter, so I don't know when I'm not going to have it when I want it. I only have to have it right here. So I might as well eat as much of it as I want, or whatever the situation.
Listen, both of those pieces resonate with me personally, and I'm sure with other folks as well. The perfectionism thing. Hello, recovering perfectionist here, and you're right. It doesn't have to be so extreme. There
Mhm.
are nuances, and there are decisions that can be made in the context, or in depending on where we are, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing, as you mentioned. And then that scarcity, oh my goodness, as an immigrant child, right? It's like, well, your cousins in the Philippines can't have this. You got to clean off your plate or what have you.
Yes.
So it it's interesting, how these messages we receive even growing up in our households. Do you tap into that at all with your clients, like childhood stuff, or how food was talked about in the home? Does that come up at all?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
so disclaimer, and I want to make sure that this is very clear. I am not a doctor. I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm not formally trained on binge eating disorders. I just know from my personal experience and the research that I've done. But
Yeah.
yeah, we try to dig as deep as I possibly can to a point that's going to be safe. I don't want to bring them to a triggering state and then just be like, okay, time's up, goodbye.
Yeah.
Like I'd never
Makes sense.
do that. But we do talk about that a lot. Like sometimes clients will, they'll be like, man, I had a really bad day at work and I stopped by Dunkin' Donuts and I had, Dunkin'
Mm,
Donuts on the way home. Not saying Dunkin' Donuts is bad at all, but I'm, just saying like that's their routine. And I'm like, do you feel like you've done this a lot? And they're like, yeah, well, when do you think this started? Like maybe,
mm.
if you had a bad day at school, would you come home? And obviously you'd want to be, warm and welcomed, right? So you'd go to your mom and maybe your mom would give you a cookie. And then
Mm,
that would make you feel safe, right? So
mm.
now every single time you have a bad day, you automatically, because that neural pathway has been like carved into your brain,
Yeah.
like laser carved, your brain automatically sends you that signal. Oh, you know what, Rowena, you want a cookie today, don't you? And then
Mm.
you're like, you know what, a cookie would taste really good, and then you have that. So it's like it's habitual sometimes as
Yeah.
well. So it's just recognizing, one of the things is we have to recognize the cycle is happening, and then we have to start putting into place things to either do instead of that behavior. Obviously, if it's harming us, right, we want to put things in place that are going to not, I don't want to say replace, because that kind of sounds like addiction, right? When we put down one thing, most often we pick up another, but we're swapping out the negative behavior, the thing that's
Mm,
hurting us. Because
mhm,
in the we might not think of binge eating as being harmful, but it honestly is. It is a form of, it could be considered a form of self harm, right? So
mm.
instead of doing the negative, um, behavior, we want to swap it with something that's actually going to serve us, in the moment,
So what would you swap instead of the cookie then, Kayla?
So we're looking for comfort. We're looking for something that makes us feel
Mm,
good, right? So, let's say you have a pet, right? And
mm,
you get great joy from cuddling with your cat or your dog, right? So when you have a bad day, within reason, obviously, go find your pet and pour your energy into loving that animal, because don't
mm.
you just love that warm, cuddly feeling that you receive back from that animal, right?
Yeah.
So love and affection gives the same kind of immediate gratification that food does. So
Yeah.
that might be a reasonable swap, or go for a walk instead, right?
Mm.
So if you normally, if you get upset and your initial response is to, um, I don't know, maybe
Have a
abuse
glass of
alcohol or
wine.
something like
I
that,
was gonna say
maybe.
that. I
Yeah.
feel like that's a thing, right? It's like, "Oh, I need a
Yes, I
glass
was
of
just like,
wine."
I don't know if I really want to like say that, but um so yeah, to go for a walk, or something else, or
Yeah.
to do something that's actually going to make you feel good in a different way, painting your nails, taking a bubble bath,
Mm,
reading a book, journaling, watching a TV show that you like, meditating,
mm,
and those things are hard to do in the moment, because especially binge brain or binge thoughts, they're
mhm.
so convincing. they are so
Mm.
they're so convincing. They make you honestly think that that's what you want in the moment, and it almost kind of like glorifies it, or fantasizes, you fantasize about it, right? So you're creating this beautiful, wonderful picture of what what the experience is going to be like. And
Yeah.
then when you do give into it, you're like, this is not like what I thought it was going to be. Like SpongeBob and Patrick, and he's like, this is not the same ride. So like, just trying to do something else, and again, like I said, that's going to be really hard, breaking that cycle, because like I said, that thought process is so clear in the person's mind that it's going to take multiple times for us to be like, you might even be halfway into your binge, but then you're like, you know what, I should just go for a walk. And then if you stop and go for a walk, to me that's a success, because the
Yeah.
next time you go to do it, it might be smaller, and then you're like, oh, I should have taken a walk, I'm going to go do that, or you'll stop yourself and be like, why am I doing this? So it might take you a couple times to fail, but we're learning how to stop that cycle before it continues fully, right? We're
Mhm.
stopping the revelation before it creates a full and complete revelation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Goodness. Yeah, that's such a great example. And you gave so many alternatives, like a whole laundry list of alternatives. And I I feel that sometimes it's easier said than done, right? Like
Yeah.
I know what I can do. I know what I can do, but as you said, that binge brain can be so compelling. I know that with my clients when we talk about that inner saboteur, right? Like the monkey mind,
Mhm.
or the Ariana Huffington talks about it as that annoying roommate who's
Yeah.
just filling in your brain, like telling it. Do you name the binge brain at all, or do you personify the binge brain at all? I'm just curious as like
um
a way to talk.
Negative self-talk, I guess I just kind of link it up with negative self-talk, because
Mm,
negative self-talk for me and binge brain sound very similar. they're
okay.
they're just mean. They're just mean,
Yeah.
and very like brash. They're
Mm,
almost like the opposite of me, I think, to an extent. But just like, I mean, but also coaxing and convincing in the moment too. I mean, it changes, right? But
yeah.
I just would call that voice, I just automatically link it to negative self-talk because they're very negative, very
Yeah.
hurtful, very demeaning to me. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, and also, but like I said, it can change as well. But no, I haven't
Absolutely.
named it.
Do you, so when you talk about, you mentioned these amazing strategies that you can employ versus giving into the binge. Do you do any sort of meal planning aspect as well? Is there like a food related component or a nutrition component that you kind of include in this programming or that you talk to with your clients?
Yeah, so I mean, for me personally, I do meal prep for myself. And when I
Mm,
say that, basically, Rowena, what it is, I'm just cooking a bunch of food to last me the whole entire week. I used to like pre portion them out. They were in containers, those, meal prep containers in my
yep.
refrigerator and everything like that. And that to me is, I mean, it might work for someone at different stages of their recovery, definitely, right? If you still need help portioning out, you're not quite sure of, can I trust myself and listen to my hunger and fullness signals, right? So that might be a
Mhm.
really great tool. But right now I just kind of cook enough for the whole week, and then when I go to pick my meals, I'm like, okay, well, how hungry am I today? Because I want
Mm.
to make sure that I'm honoring my body and I'm eating within a reasonable range, right? So I do that. And then also, it's been a long, hard road of allowing myself foods that weren't program approved before, right? So I was on that diet program for over a year and a half, off
Wow.
and on, because I was I was binging, and then I was trying to undo what I did with
Yeah.
the diet. So when the pandemic hit last March, I started buying foods that I wouldn't have normally ate because I didn't know when I was going to get to the store. Right? We were
Mhm.
told to stay in our homes, so um, allowing myself to eat foods that I either would have normally binged on or that weren't program approved was very hard in the beginning, and it took
Mhm.
it took a long time to be able to be okay with eating those things and not feeling super guilty. And then also being able to eat those things without feeling the need to binge. I think it's something that I still work on every day. But
Mhm.
I can tell you, mentally, emotionally, physically, I'm so much better than I was a year and a half ago today. Um, so when I talk with my clients, when we're looking at how can we like how can we work through our binge behaviors, and more importantly than meal planning or anything like that, I guess, is just making sure that they're eating enough, because again, restriction plays a big role in it, and
Mhm.
under eating. So
Mhm.
if we're not feeding our body properly, and we have all of these harsh food rules that we have to stick to, and we feel very limited in those food choices,
Yeah.
it's going to create that binge urge, right? So
Mm.
making sure that we're eating adequately is really, really, really important to feed the body the nutrients that it needs, so that the natural response of wanting to binge doesn't occur, because it is a natural response. It's your body's way of telling you, Kayla, you need to eat more food.
Yeah, yeah.
So helping them learn how to eat adequately. And it can be very challenging at the beginning, especially if you are someone that has been chronically dieting for long periods of time, or is still under the mindset that in order to be successful in your weight loss journey, you have to eat 1,200 calories.
Mm. Mm. You mentioned the cues, right? So the hunger cues and that you're full. How do you know? Is it different from individual to individual, or can
Oh, of
you
course.
yeah. Yeah.
Of course. So, within the last year, I've really changed like my whole, I guess, method, and my way of helping women go through this, because I was still in the thick of it, but I've acquired more of the intuitive eating kind of practices.
Yeah.
And so intuitive eating has a hunger and fullness scale. And so I give that information to my clients, and I help them walk through kind of understanding what it means, and then where we should be within a normal base, like on a normal basis.
Mhm.
I also provide them other resources as well, that I think they've been so helpful for me. And I have them, even if they don't consider themselves a binge eater, but they have an, a disordered eating frame of mind,
Yeah.
right? I refer them to Brain Over Binge, which is a podcast, as well as a book. And she,
Mm.
if I hadn't found her, I think I'd still be knee deep in my binge eating at the
Oh,
moment.
wow.
So that book and the podcast has just been so helpful for me, and so I do share that content with them as well. And she outlines like the 5 ways to dismiss the binge urge, and understanding where it's coming from, and understanding that you have a choice whether or not you wish to follow it, and recognizing the differences of what the binge urge is, and that's probably not something I want to follow. And then also, like, what is a craving, and then knowing the difference, because I feel like
Mm.
a lot of people don't know the difference between those two either.
So I'm glad that you brought up intuitive eating because I was thinking of that. A friend had told me about the concept of it, and so I'm definitely going to be looking into the resources, and I can also share them in the comments when this is said and done, so that others who are interested in the resource can look into it more. Because I find it, you know, in general, I feel like myself and the clients that I work with, we're all about tapping into that intuition and exercising that intuitive muscle because we know what we need, whether that is in the form of the food that we eat or the self-care that we need or what have you. So thank you for bringing that. I'm very interested to read more and learn more about it because it I think it would be a helpful tool for a lot of folks, especially now that we're transitioning out of COVID, right? And kind of
Mm-hmm.
going back into the world, people are eating out again, or they're saying, oh no, like what have I done? I've been home for a year and a half. Let me try to get back into healthier practices. So yeah, it's an
Yeah.
interesting concept for sure.
Yeah. Now, I mean, so a lot of people might disagree with what I said,
Mm.
especially when it comes to, like, if someone is has such a dissociation with their body and with their food and what their body actually needs, it's going
Mm.
to be very challenging at the beginning to listen to those hunger cues, because we don't talk about it enough, of like what it means to, like, what does you know what does hunger feel like? What does fullness feel like? We over glorify, stuffing our bodies full of food, right? I mean, all you can eat buffets and eating as much as you want, and,
Mhm.
gluttony of food. And so being able to, and commercials are being pelted at us all the time, advertisements, and at, like, marketing all the time to purchase and buy certain things. So
Mhm.
a lot of the times those hunger cues and those fullness cues get masked by a lot of things. So it's going to be challenging in the beginning to take the time to listen to your body. What does my body need in that moment? And I would suggest, if someone is struggling and they're knee deep in it and they really want to start their recovery journey, obviously talk to a professional that, you
Right.
know, um, deals specifically with that, or you might even want to talk to a nutritionist. My thing with that, though, is if they're not doing a sensitivity food test with you, run. If they're not taking into consideration any of the other life factors, and they're just telling you a blanketed statement of, here, Rowena, eat this, and I haven't looked at anything else from you,
Oh,
it's a red flag. So just wanted
noted.
to share that.
No, thank you. That's definitely very very good to know. Um, and yes, I appreciate the disclaimer throughout that you're sharing your experience and that if needed, there are professionals out there. And I appreciate you sharing the red flags as well because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So I and 1000% agree with the messaging that we receive. And oftentimes, at least I know for me, and I'll speak from my lived experience, oftentimes the craving or the food is, as you mentioned, it's not even about the food. It's that I want to feel a certain way. I want to have a freedom, or I want to feel affection, or I want to feel comforted, I want to feel safe. So oftentimes there's some underlying feeling or need versus the need for the food that you want to eat. So this is this is all very, very helpful information.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, it's challenging, and to be given a space where you can feel comfortable to be able to express your needs as well is really
Mm,
important. And again, we don't talk about that either. We suppress our feelings. You know, boys are not meant to show emotion, and girls are okay to show emotion, but it's even like, oh, you're just being a girl. Like our gender roles and our expectations of certain gender has just been, it just needs to be changed. It really does. And I hope that with our little blip in time that we're spending together, and the time that you're listening to this, that if you do take anything out of this, it's just like we got to get back to basics, and we got to start listening to ourselves again, and kind of like putting on the blinders and really figuring out like what's going to work best for me. I don't care about
mm.
this person over here. Like, what's going to work best for me, and really being okay with that. Because I mean, I have to be honest, that's something that I struggle with too, being okay with what I'm doing in my life and what I'm doing in my business, and how that's helping other people, and staying focused and keeping those blinders on.
Absolutely. The comparison game can be so real. The imposter syndrome,
Oh yeah.
well, so and so's doing this over there. What am I doing wrong or whatever? But I feel that this conversation alone is a true testament that you are on your unique journey, and that you are pouring your heart and soul into your work. And, Kayla Barnes is stamped all over it, and you're doing it the way that feels right to you and that you're in alignment with that. So again, that's amazing. And yes, let's talk about these things more, right? There's so much
Mhm.
stigma and shame surrounding all of this. And as women, as girls, we have to feel or be made to feel small. We have to physically, and even,
Oh yeah.
with our
Yeah.
energy. And so let's just submit and know that what's best for us. As you mentioned, that was such a beautiful message. um so, my last question, just to wrap things up, you mentioned having a space. You have a space, a business. Where can people find you? How can they learn more about what you offer, especially when it comes to the ditching the diet mentality and getting fit and working with you and becoming our best selves?
Yeah, well, you can find me in a multitude of places. First, most easiest is probably Instagram at Kayla Marie Fit, Facebook Kayla Barnes, and then you can also visit my website kaylabarnesfitness.com, and all of that information is on there as well. And if you want to if you want to shoot me a DM or an instant message, I'm always on it, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can.
Don't be shy, folks. Kayla is awesome. From our first conversation, I was like, yes, I dig her vibe, her energy. I invited
Oh.
her onto this show. I appreciate you so much for sharing your vulnerability, your message. Again, it needs to be heard. And I'll be sure to share all of your links in the comments so that people can find you and get to know you, and embrace this amazing work that you're doing. So I thank you so much for being here today, Kayla. It really has been a pleasure.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I've appreciated it so much too, and I appreciate other like-minded people. And same, I feel the exact same from our first conversation to today. I just feel like we're like two peas in a pod.
Yes, two peas in a pod. So That's it for today. Next time, we're gonna bring Leah Fink back on because the last time she tried to come on, we had some epic tech difficulties because she was on a work trip and the internet did not cooperate. But that's okay because she's gonna come back and talk about increasing your return on relationship, your ROR. So now we got our, physical fitness and dieting. Now let's talk about relationships as well, our relationships to from relationships to food to relationships with our loved ones. So until then, enjoy the rest of your week and we will see you soon. Thank you. Bye.